Welcome to the Symphony of Realities podcast, boldly taking you where no podcast has gone before. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation as you settle into your X, Y, and Z coordinates within time and space. Here are your hosts, Christopher Anatra and Sean Bond.
Hey. Oh, you're muted.
I am unmuted now. I was conducting the symphony as it was going, and you were doing something over there, Sean.
Yes, I'm getting all Egyptian.
Look at your background.
Yeah, right. Yeah, going into like before and like triggering times, like it was much more defined aspects of the Nile, cultivated, and to make it more green, and then he kind of shifted over. And like this goes into the records of it too, and it's talked about by some of the archaeologists.
Yeah, so we've got a really. I think this podcast is going to be really, really thought-provoking and consciousness expanding, because there's going to be a lot of things that get tied together that perhaps people had no idea about before. So I'm really excited about this one. Egypt.
Me too. Looking forward to what we got up for us today.
I know. And what really is ancient Egypt but an offshoot of Atlantis, right?
Yeah, at least when I like track it back, like because a lot of people say different things, and it's like wonderful, and then they'll all call it a card of belief. But at least with what I see, it seems to be true, and like it expanded around the world to different places, and then Egypt seemed to start at its civilization at the highest peak of its capacity and intelligence and technology, and then slowly declined over time, which also goes along with the precession of the equinox, the great year, the binary star system, circulation between our star system and Sirius A, and where the farther we get away goes into the Iron Age, the Dark Ages, whatever is closer. It comes the coming of the second sun. It gets higher in consciousness, and we go through this cycle, and that's the Golden Age. And then, when people align that with coming out of the Golden Age and to less and less consciousness, it seems to be the progression of the civilization of Egypt that goes along with their eventual fall.
Interesting. I wonder where we are in the circle of progress, if we're approaching another.
Based on what I've been able to find, we came out of the worst times of the Age of Darkness and Iron Age, and we're kind of going out of the Iron Age into the Bronze Age. So we're going towards the Golden Age, but we're kind of like coming out of the worst periods into the Bronze.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's, other people might say other things.
Right. By the way, you might have to like turn the music down a little bit, because we'll be playing other things too in the background. But
totally.
Yeah.
Like the atmosphere.
Yeah. All right. So let's begin. We've got a little PowerPoint that's going to guide us along the way. First thing is, for those of you out there that don't know Sean, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. If you two do as well. I'm Sean Bond of the PsionicLeague, and we're making a group to train people in psionic emergence, as we're an emergent species in psionics, and understanding mental physics, mind over matter, and going into accumulating data from different civilizations that like bring to amplification of all aspects of life, making everything better in a game. Out of everything you can gain enjoyment that works, and like going into healing. I'm a healer. I've been able to release pain from people over a distance fairly successfully, chronic and acute pain, gone in massage therapy, and also amplified that into many other aspects: motion, suffering, types of energy, transmutation, and formed many abilities, learned how to read DNA, unlock dormant abilities, past life memories, the Akashic record, and how we met, as you are proficient in that yourself. And I teach all this to others, and we're accumulating members and we're growing and growing strong as you are also a member.
Yeah, you've got a nice group going there with the Psionic League. Absolutely. And I'm happy to be part of that too. Yes. So for people that don't know me, my name's Christopher Natra. You may know me as the Quantum Businessman. And I create videos about Mandela effects and reality and consciousness and the holographic nature of our reality. And everything that I try to do helps to expand people's consciousness and bring them to another level of understanding about what really reality is. And it's not what we've been taught. It's very deep. There's a lot to it. And being able to navigate through that in the most successful way, and to be able to ultimately have abundance in your life. So for me, abundance is that's like, when I hear the word abundance, I'm like, whoa, gets my attention. So
yeah, you got like spiritually more activations than most people I know in abundance. So looking forward to when you share that in videos with the world, and put in the comments if you want to hear more of that stuff, and because we need to get him confident about like bringing that technology out to everyone.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, and it's I don't know if we want to say I don't know if you want to just say this real quick. I'm just telling, this is like off the cuff. Sean's not expecting me to say this at all. You introduced me to something recently about a technology related to the umbilical cord and the belly button. Do you remember what I'm talking about? You had a name for that.
Yeah, like the navel chakra will go into and everything entangled with it. The dantian, the storage hub, the like the battery of the body. It will go into being nourished by the universe and the galaxy and like beyond, depending on like mother aspects that you unite with and love.
Right, because like when you're in the womb, you're nourished by your mother through the umbilical cord. And there's a certain type of technology you can activate to help bring in that constant flow of nourishment and abundance. Anyway, I wanted to say it so people's higher selves are like, oh, that sounds interesting. I never knew that about the belly button chakra and all that. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Because it's a button, you got to press it longer than you would usually press it for, and then at different angles, like let's say down directly, and then 8 different angles in a clock, and then you for a certain amount of time in an activation.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool, and it's actually technology you can activate. So we'll have to create a video about that in the future. For now, back to Egypt, or onwards to Egypt, or backwards in time to Egypt.
Remarkably, there's a therapy for it. I don't remember what it is. I think it's I don't know, maybe naval therapy.
Okay, that could be. Okay, so first we're going to talk about some just like plain old Mandela effects about Egypt. So one is the current number of pyramids that were there. And I know for myself, it was only the one pyramid, what's now known as the Great Pyramid of Giza. But a lot of people were kind of shocked to discover that there are actually 6 pyramids there. So for a lot of people, that's a Mandela effect. And the other Mandela effect that I'll mention has to do with its location, because I was always taught it was at least a 30-minute bus ride outside of Cairo. And right now the pyramids are literally like right next to the city line. And you and I, Sean, we had gone to Egypt in 2018. And I remember one of the ladies that was with the group that we were with, she had gone to Egypt previously, maybe in the 80s or the 90s. And she remembered the long bus ride. But I was trying to tell her how it was a Mandela effect, that the city was right next to the pyramids. And she just thought that the city grew since she was there the last time, and it just like grew next to the pyramids. And I'm like, no, like look how old those buildings, like all the buildings that are nearby are really old. Even the hotel that we stayed at was right in the shadow of the pyramids. And just to show people what I mean, we've got like a video clip we're gonna play of it's called the Marriott Mina Hotel, I believe. But it's just like about a minute. Maybe we'll talk over it. But if we can get that one queued up and So here it is. So look at the pyramids are right there. But yeah, I mean, it's like right there. I remember like when we first got there, like I started vibrating. Literally, like I thought I was going to go just, and I was like, just being so close to the pyramids like that.
Same. It was a freak out moment, and I was, and yeah, love that clip. It brings me back there. It's a great hotel too. Man.
Yeah, it was a really nice hotel, and it was actually before it was a hotel, it was a fortress. So there was like another big building there. So it's not like, oh, they just built the hotel. It was like the building was originally created, I think, in the early 1800s or something like that. So this is all historic. So again, the whole concept of the Mandela effect, not matching people's memories and remembrances. So we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, here's another one that I wanted to comment. I mentioned this before, and I just want to say it again because this one really blew my mind. Because before we went on this Egyptian trip, I did all of this. I was like Mr. Egypt, doing all this research about, because I knew the places we were going to go visit, like for example, the Temple of Ramses. So I wanted to find out who is this Ramses character, and Ramses II, or known as Ramses the Great. And so I watched some History Channel things about him, and it was really, he was a very powerful leader. He did a lot of things to unite Egypt, but his death was crazy because he died at an early age. He was in his 40s, and it was mystery. It was mysterious, and people thought he was poisoned because just all of a sudden he was at the, totally healthy, and then he just deteriorated, and in a few days he was dead. So what made this like extra kind of sad is that the priests at the time couldn't figure out why he died. So what they did is they just thought of who the actual, possible people were that could have killed him or wanted to kill him. And they went to his main queen, and their son. So the queen's name, it's on the PowerPoint slide there, was Queen Isetnefret. And then their son, Prince Kahim Weset, they were put to death because they were the prime suspects. And it was like really sad. Then, so for me, this, like for some people that maybe remembering it the way I do or differently, in this timeline, he lives to the age of at least 90, and they say the cause of death is arthritis. And I'm like, that is like not at all the research that I did. And of course, all those shows on the History Channel and stuff, they're all gone. Like I can't find them. So definitely, I feel like we're in a better timeline anyway for Ramses II. And his son that they had put to death when he was like a kid now lives to the age of 90. And they found his remains or something related to him in the Serapeum that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So I don't know if you have any input on this particular Mandela.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation having to do with this subject about his death, and like going into that and like, let's read all of it and like, what does it mean? And a lot of stuff we should probably not talk about, but and then man,
yeah, I mean,
larger than other people in most of the places that we went there, and the big giant statues outside, and nobody talking about that, and that being almost in the middle of nowhere and taking a long ass time to get out there. Like, why would it be out there?
The temple of Ramses you're talking about? Yeah, we've got a couple of photos. We'll bring them up. One is of me in the front of it, and the other one's of you in the front of the temple.
Yeah, and we were like reading back in his death that it had like something to do with like some entity that like drew out his life like after making a deal with him and power. Yeah, that was beautiful.
Yeah. So there, this is one of me in front of the temple of Ramses, and it's kind of funny because they show the giant statues, right? And then there's regular people-sized statues there as well. And I thought that was like, perhaps maybe they were bigger than normal.
Yeah, they don't just like do that for no reason. I mean, some people were like, oh, they're bigger than life. And it was like, oh yeah. And then these other, okay, so that like, oh, if the other people at normal size were slaves and stuff, maybe. But some of the normal size people were kings and stuff. So there's like, maybe there's something else going on with that. And then why are they all looking kind of similar in face? And it's like, oh, well, okay. But yeah, and there's like weird things like if people want to go into like, I also kind of remember the one pyramid thing, but as it shifted for me like middle school or something, I more researched into the three thing, and then going along with Orion's belt, a lot of the monuments and temples and tombs and stuff seem to align with the stars, and so if anyone wants to go like tomb hunting, they should put a big map over of all the stars onto the general location where it's been mapped out already to find out where those other places might be if you start digging, which has been successful with some of the archaeologists that have done it so far. Like most of it, like 90+%. The Egyptians are very big on ceremony with their mapping out the stars and locations for things. So.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I think what we were getting before, we were talking about like Ramses and like just to put it at a higher level, and his early death had to do with him basically making a not so good of a deal with like an entity for something, and he got the shorter end of the stick. And I believe that maybe in this timeline, the deal got straightened out, and he was actually able to live a normal lifespan and still accomplish the great things that he did, and still have it so that his main wife and their son were not executed with him. So,
yeah, we were also like looking at like things that were literally telling us that it might have been the family or his significant other that might have killed him. I remember that too.
Right.
So that's weird that that's now completely gone.
It's completely
like, arthritis.
Yeah.
And then do you know many people that have died of arthritis? And this kind of goes into the rabbit hole of arthritis, I suppose, because most mainstream science that you're going to look up is going to be like, oh, it's build up those areas of the joints and other places. And also like the rabbit hole of what causes heart disease, and they will talk about cholesterol and plaque and stuff, but they'll never really talk about what the ingredients of the plaque is. But you have to dig deeper. Some of the time is like coral, like when surfers, they like be careful not to get cut by the coral, because then the coral will infect them. Self-replicating nanobacterial nanoparticle calcium that then starts creating more and building up more, and then creating big chunks of plaque that can cause heart attacks, similar as like different types of calcium. Not all calcium is bad, but you definitely don't need too much of it. And then our industry goes into drink milk all the time. And and then other ways that people are over getting calcium, and then it goes into like forming more plaque that then causes heart attack. Do you think it's a thing going along with that, or was it not explained much, is death?
You know what's really interesting is that like probably a couple of months ago when I was looking into his death, everything said that he died of hardening of the arteries. Now everything says he died of arthritis. So it's like, which one is it, guys? Like, why does Wikipedia keep changing, or is it different timeline?
Okay. Well, that's kind of the same thing, though. Then hardening up the arteries, heart attacks, and then arthritis, because that then accumulates in those areas.
Exactly.
Not saying it needs to be coral or anything, but there's other types of calcium, I forgot. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't really have too much more to add to that part of it. Besides, some of these Mandela effects affect you more than others, especially when they're ones that are closer to you or you've done more research on them. And then when it completely changes, it's.
Yeah, right. And then it's like after a while of getting it so much, it's like, well, I'm used to it now. And then in 2020, you're like, how many mind-blowing experiences has everyone been through? We're like, get in line.
Right.
Yeah, every day now there's a amount of things that are coming into people's perception that it took like weeks before, months before. Now,
right.
Like quickening of time. The quickening is here.
All right, talking about the quickening, let's click on to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So the next slide is talking about the Serapeum or Serapeum. I'm not even sure if it's potato or potato, but this one was something I did another podcast the other week with the International Mandela Effect Conference, and the Serapeum was part of that. And I just wanted to bring this up again because it's all tied into Egypt. But the Serapeum is an underground labyrinth located next to the Saqqara Pyramid in Egypt, discovered by French archaeologist Auguste Mariette in 1851. Now, I had never heard of the Serapeum. We went to the Pyramid of Saqqara. I definitely don't remember this. This is if you're going to go to the Pyramid of Saqqara, I guess you're going to also see the Serapeum. It's very famous. I don't ever remember it. But to give everyone an idea what the heck this Serapeum is, because ultimately we're going to bring this back to Atlantis, there is a video clip that will play next from this channel called Uncharted X, and they did like a 4-part series on the Serapeum, and we're just going to watch the first couple of minutes, just so that everyone kind of gets a little briefing about what is the Serapeum that they're talking about. So let's play this one.
Of all the many sites in Egypt that show signs of ancient high technology, this site stands alone. It is unique. And of all of the many concrete and verifiable examples of ancient high technology that can be found in this place, this one example is my clear favorite. Let's take a moment to understand what we're looking at here. This is a giant, gargantuan box that has been carved from a single piece of extremely hard material, in this case, granodiorite. It weighs probably in excess of 100 tons, certainly well north of that figure when you include the lid. It stands 11 feet high. It has a precision-carved interior surface, the planes of which are perfectly square and parallel to each other, and to the box's lid. The interior corners have been finished down to a radius of at most 5/32 of an inch or under 4 millimeters. And the interior walls of this box have been measured as being flat to within 1/20th the width of a human hair. It has been dragged into an underground labyrinth and tucked away into the back corner of one of the alcoves in this site. In some cases, you had less than a foot of clearance in the tunnels that it was moved through. And it's been there for thousands and thousands of years, possibly tens of thousands of years, I think.
I cannot imagine handling massive pieces like this in a very narrow places like that.
How do you quarry this stone? How do you move it from its original location? How do you move it into the tunnels? How do you carve out all that material and finish the interior surfaces to such an astonishing degree of precision? There's no room for people. There's no room for the machinery. Yet here it lies as proof of this achievement, of something that our civilization has never achieved to this point. Now, what if I told you that there are at least 24 more of these boxes, all of similar size and similar dimensions, all with similar precision-carved interior surfaces, all just like this one, and they're all underground, and they're all mind-blowing in their construction and in their location. I think that if you're looking for proof of ancient high technology, if you're open to that idea, if you're looking for some incredible achievements of ancient engineering that we cannot attribute to the ancient civilizations that we do, here it is. We have never made anything like this in our civilization. I don't think the ancient Egyptians made these objects. I think they inherited them. This site stands alone as just jaw-dropping proof that something well beyond our understanding was happening, and it was happening deep in antiquity.
Okay, so that'll give everybody a briefing as to like what the Serapeum is. And if we can go back to that slide. Okay, so the way it was discovered by Auguste Mariette was that he was around the pyramid of Saqqara, and there was a sandstorm, and he discovered the head of a Sphinx sticking out of the sand. Not the big Sphinx like a Giza, but smaller Sphinx. Wound up unburying that, and there were a total of 600 of these Sphinxes that lined an avenue down into the entrance of this labyrinth. And right now, like modern Egyptology says that it's a burial place for Apis bulls. However, and there were some mummified parts, like there's different parts to it. There's like the older part where these big, huge 100-ton black granite boxes are. And then there's a newer section where they did find remains of like Apis bulls, but Egyptologists now say the whole complex was a burial place for Apis bulls. But these big containers, like they showed like an Apis bull would be like so tiny, like they're so big. There's so much extra room for a bull. It just didn't make any sense. So to make this story like intriguing, and the story gets more intriguing as we go on, these big 100-ton granite ones, all of them were opened a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 feet, except for one. One was still sealed, closed. So of course, Auguste Mariette's like, wow, I wonder what's in this one. Grave robbers or whoever didn't get to this one. So they tried everything to open that cover. They could not open that cover. It was heavy. It was like almost, I don't even know. They couldn't open it. So their solution was to dynamite it open. And there is a picture that we can bring up of this one Serapeum that they put all the explosives next to, and they were able to dynamite it. See if we can bring that picture up as we're talking about it. But that was their only solution. And who knows what Auguste Mariette, yeah, here it is. Who knows what Auguste Mariette thought they were going to find? Gold, a mummy, whatever. They dynamited it open, and it's completely empty. Or so they think. So I think this was really important. And as we go on with this podcast, like this is going to become a central part or an important part of what we talk about when we start putting pieces together from history and the Akashic records in ways that you can't even make this stuff up. It just like starts flowing at you. So yeah, so if we go back to that slide. I just want to make sure that I continue. I don't lose any bullet points. Okay. So the measurement, when they measured they were quarried from black granite. The closest quarry they could find was literally 500 miles away over these mountain ranges in Egypt. And for them to be able to quarry it out without having any defects, they would have had to go like 15 to 30 meters deep into the quarry, which would have been an amazing feat to begin with. This black granite is so hard, like there's like a hardness scale. I think it's like a 6 or a 7. I think titanium or something else comes after it. So this is very, 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 very hard substance. It was the perfection of it inside is up to 1 micron. It's highly polished on the inside. It just doesn't make, so when people study this, like it doesn't make any sense. How do they quarry it? How do they make it just into one piece? And then how do they transport this over the mountain ranges to get it to this location, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So perhaps this was technology from Atlantis. And perhaps if it was technology from Atlantis, what would its purpose be? Like, what are these like big granite like that were empty, right? Doesn't seem, at first it doesn't seem to make any sense. So I don't know if you have anything you want to add to this, Sean, before we go on.
Sure. And I'm not an arbiter of truth, so I'm just going in that. Like I like naming the possibilities, and like let's expand into that. So hey, it might have been technology inherited from Atlantis. It might be because their inheritance from Atlantis themselves, and they had some of the technology left over, and geomantics, be able to carve stone out. There's evidence of, in some places, the ability to melt stone and then form it into place. There's the what we know from Coral Castle with Edward.
All right,
What's his name? Edward Lee's Scollenge. I'm gonna look at his. Leeds Scal in Florida. And he like moved huge structures into place, and he did that in private. There's like some rumors about kids like showed up and saw him, and then they said, "Oh, he looked like he was holding ice cream cones or some type of cones or something." So, and then like some people are going into maybe acoustic levitation and concepts of the different forms of levitation that's brought into scope. The secret of the scarab beetle, which like how do beetles and bees, how are they able to fly with their mass not being equivalent to their wingspan? And then the caps and the wings and the microstructures of them, and how they allow for like lift and levity, and there's a whole science into that, and that's pretty interesting. And some scientists went into like making a platform covered in beetle winged shells, and then they were able to make the object like levitate a bit. So there's going into that and other forms, and then having drawing power from certain ley lines, which is why the Egyptians and many other ancient civilizations would make their civilization on ley line points and big places of power to begin with, to draw upon it and then utilize that for different technologies, such as being able to move giant structures through narrow hallways that would be insane otherwise, unless you had some ability to make them weightless. So, and then, why are they made of that material? Like, is that the best thing to make a coffin out of? And like some of the coffins didn't even have bones or anything in them. Like you said, they were completely empty, nothing at all, and like clean and pristine. Would you read into that it was kind of, what did you find with how clean they were?
Yeah, they were remarkable. Like they said that they were just like highly polished on the inside, like to a perfection, like better even than being like laser cut. So the whole question is, what were these things? Some people have put forward that they could have been somehow batteries for something. There's all different theories that people have come up with, but and just to let everyone know, the reason like this really captivated me too is because I'm creating these videos about Atlantis, and this came up, and I'm going to put forward that perhaps this was technology that was created directly by Atlantis and was already put into place by the time, the ancient Egyptians or the Old Kingdom came into being. Like these Serapeum, at least these big ones, may have already been there. And then why would Atlantis create them, so to speak?
And then how our dating process is pretty malfunctional when you go into forbidden archaeology and the concepts of all the things that were covered up, and then anything that doesn't go along with mainstream science gets thrown out or covered up or hidden or taken away by the Smithsonian, put underground in their basement. and like were buried up, and like the Egyptian government, we found out from the locals that they were doing a little bit of archaeology before, and there were so many secret sites, but the government is like, would you remember them saying they just like after a while they decided, no, let's cover it back up with sand.
Right. That doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't make sense. All right. So to continue the drama and the intrigue here, let's go on to the next slide.
Oh, wait. Like, based on what other purposes could be for them? Like, okay, Apis bull. So you remember like stuff having to do with Alexander, and there's like an Apis bull. Like you have a picture of him.
Yeah.
One of the ones, in, like it being a representation of the kings and gods in Hathor, and some like being able to bestow graces and
yeah, and the Apis bull somehow, like when it came to Alexander the Great, was able to prove his like heritage, or prove that he had the right to rule, so to speak. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there's other ways that they disposed or mummified the Apis bulls besides that, and then what was the regular procedure, because this seems to be going against that. And then why would you make these big containers that you couldn't get out yourself if you were sealed into it? Or they seem to kind of act really like frequency. I'd have to like look at it scientifically, but what it looks like the material would be impeding certain things from getting in or out.
Oh yeah.
On like how heavy it is and everything else.
Exactly.
So is it possible that it could be not a conventional burial? Because like usually they would want to help the spirit pass over and become immortal in the next life, or whatever the factions believe they can be resurrected in. Could there be a form of burial that acts like a prison or a container, or preventing moving or escaping to the next life, or whatever? If let's do hypotheticals, maybe there's like a way they would make prisons for very powerful multidimensional beings that were thought of as necessary to seal up away in there, whether it was the dark faction doing it or the light faction doing it for really negative things inside. Who knows? And that would be going into the concept of how many of these underground structures are for sealing away evil, like when we went down the rabbit hole of how many of these tombs were protected by curses and like things written down on them. What would you come across in the different curses? I'll like name a few.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to mention that, you know, one of the things I always say is like it's really good. So like someone like me trying to read the Akashic records, and I'm getting like a hit on this and a hit on that and visuals and so forth. It's always good like to compare. So like when I feel I get, you know, information about something, and then I talk to you about it without you knowing what I'm talking about, and you get the same thing. I love it how like when you get confirmations like that, it's like, oh, it's not. So what we're gonna as we go on and we can continue to talk about the Serapeum and the French archaeologist and this opera that he wrote, I think it's all going to start to come together for people. But talking about the curses, right? See here, like that guy that unearthed King Tut's tomb, like there were, like, weren't there like strange occurrences that happened to him and the people that were associated with that?
Yeah, I'm not like, my memory isn't the best, but I remember like quite a few of the tombs that got unearthed had like big curses on them. And then some of the occurrences that happened to people were pretty devastating. Some people, the entire team died mysteriously and afterwards. And like, I remember some curses being like, Oh, may all the snakes on the earth turn against you, all the alligators turn against you, all the scorpions turn. And like one was like was a curse by Set, and Set like, oh, I'm gonna rape you. It's the what Set and then the person that broke the tomb, they said they didn't report anything. Who would report that? But that's pretty awful. And then ones where they would die of illness and like all this kind of horrible stuff. Like the different curse level is pretty interesting, and some of it is deep. I mean, there's things buried out in that desert you don't want to uncover. It's not the biggest percentage. I read there's like and take this and leave it. This is what I'm reading, and there's always going to be more. There's like stuff that I'm not able to see because it's purposely camouflaged. But like 30% of tombs, and then like 90% of the tombs have like treasure involved because they like being buried with it. But then there's certain places that are specifically into hiding treasure, and like 50% of that will have other like people buried with it. That's about 10% of these buried places have treasure, besides the tomb treasure places. Then there's like 40% that are leading to tunnel systems and underground city complexes and things that go deeper and like long stretches and like cross into other countries. It's going to be crazy. But there's video evidence of this and being shut down and caged up by the government, and people aren't allowed to go in them. There's 1% that's like special. It's like a ancient technology similar to what you're going into Atlantis tech, though most of it doesn't want to be known about to people unless like they're the right person. Then 19% of the places are like cursed places, prisons, sealed, like a grand evil that was being dealt on the planet, and how they would deal with that in sealing it away, because like other places also had similar ways to deal with it. When we went to Scotland, there was these places that were like covered with all these huge round stones. You remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That was intense.
Yeah. And we went there, and there was like people were like, there was like signs like contemplating what they were used for, and like witchcraft or other stuff. And when we went there, I was like reading what we could interact with, and there was a lot of like tingling and all these like notes and stuff. And eventually, I read that because I was like, "Oh, is this a sacred place?" Not really. And then I was interviewing it deeper, and it was stating I should not touch or take anything from the place. And I was like, okay, why? And then, or leave offerings or entangle with it. And then I kept asking, oh, okay. And then then I found out that the place we were at was like covering a burial for like a really powerful a witch that like cursed like a huge curse on the people around. And this seems to be their way to compress and quarantine the curses into like those spherical prison ball things around it. I don't know. I don't think all of them are like that, but there was a fair amount. It said that we're around Scotland, so and then we were like get headaches after that, and then we were like, oh shit, we gotta detach from this.
Yeah, no, that was what you're saying is like, and I remember that, and it was like that was a spooky place, and then somebody started playing their bagpipes nearby, and I think it was something they would normally do every day at 4:00 in the afternoon. Yeah, that's another show right there. but what you're talking about is that technology to hold a consciousness or the consciousness energy is going to play into what we talk about next. So I want to go to the next slide where we talk about the French archaeologist Auguste Mariette. Now, for me, he's new. I don't claim to be an expert in Egyptian archaeology. Heard of him before the Serapeum, but he discovered the Serapeum back in 1850 when one of the sphinxes got uncovered. By the way, those 600 sphinxes, where are they? No one knows where they are. They probably went into the hands of private collectors. So, yeah, I mean, chances are, and this will kind of talk about like what shaped Auguste Mariette. We'll get into a little bit more, but
did you wanted to say, did you? I'm just asking. Did you want to save more of the Serapeum information for your episode you're doing on?
yeah. So I am doing an episode on it, but we are going to
stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. We are going to circle back. There's more we're going to talk about here related to the play or the opera that Auguste Mariette wrote. But just to continue with that slide. So he dynamited one of the Serapeum open in 1851. And then in 1853, he discovered the Temple of the Sphinx, which is at the feet of the Great Sphinx. That was uncovered in 1853. And you and I were at the feet. We were at the paws. I don't remember that being there. We have another slide. We're going to like talk about that. Auguste Mariette became the director of the Cairo Museum. And his big thing was he wanted to stop the trade of Egyptian antiquities. And what was really bothering him is that there were so many people in Egypt, Egyptians, that were profiting and selling mummies. They were selling all kinds of ancient artifacts. And he became driven to try to keep Egypt within Egypt. So that's another important part. It seems like his life really changed after he dynamited that one last Serapeum open, and we're going to kind of get into like what could have possibly happened there. And what's really interesting is that he created the famous opera. Now, I'm not an opera person, so for some people they might be like, "Oh, of course I've heard of Aida." Aida is completely new for me. It's an opera about ancient Egypt and about a war between Egypt and Ethiopia. And it has to do with two powerful beings who are sealed alive in a tomb. So we're gonna touch on that as well. But this person, Auguste Mariette, very interesting, made a big impact in Egypt. And even at the Cairo Museum, there's a sarcophagus on the outside of the building where he's buried. Or not buried, but he's in the sarcophagus and like with a statue of him above it. So he's very famous when it comes into the world of Egypt and Egyptology. And so, unless you have anything else to say, I want to just go on to the next slide.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Okay, so Aida. First of all, do archaeologists normally write operas? To me, it's almost like if you're
all the time.
Yeah, I mean, if you're left brain enough to be an archaeologist, digging up rocks and stuff, are you right-brained enough to also create an opera? Well, obviously he did, and maybe something happened to him that really inspired him to create an opera that you might be able to call soft disclosure in a way. But this opera called Aida, it's been performed 1,100 times since 1886. It's one of the most popular operas of all times. It's always performed someplace in the world. And Giuseppe Verdi was the musician that created all the music for it. So it's a beautiful opera. It's a love story. It's a love triangle. It's got Egypt, it's got Ethiopia at war and so forth. And it's about two people being in love. So there's the commander, this Egyptian commander, who falls in love with a black slave girl. It turns out that the black slave girl from Ethiopia is actually the daughter of the king of Ethiopia, who's actually a princess, and he just completely falls for her. Meanwhile, there is the actual a princess of Egypt that's in love with this commander. So it creates like a whole love triangle. And what's interesting is that the way the opera ends, it has to do with them both being sealed alive in a tomb. So there is another clip I want to play, which is someone that gives a synopsis of the opera. And it's just about like 20 or 30 seconds, and he describes how it ends. So if we can play that, that'll just fill everyone in about like what happens at the end of this opera to these two lovers.
Radames is buried in a dark vault where he hopes Aida is safe but soon discovers she already has entered the crypt to die with him. Awaiting their tragic fate, they sing a heartbreaking duet as they bid farewell to Earth, while Amneris, prostrate above the tomb, prays for peace.
Yes, so now when I was doing research on Auguste Mariette, I didn't come across, like initially I didn't come across anything about how he wrote this play called Aida. I had no idea. And then just like within the last few days, all of a sudden I'm like, he also was the person that wrote the play Aida. I'm like, what is this Aida? So that caused me to kind of like jump into that story to see what was there. And perhaps, could it be possible, you know, the way the play ended might be a type of soft disclosure for the Serapeum, and perhaps if there was consciousness in that last Serapeum that he dynamited open, if that consciousness could have affected him to like want to, for him to understand this story and, you know, understand and communicate it to the world, not directly saying it as a fact, but like we see all the time, like we would talk in the Loki series we did, right? It's all about soft disclosure, not like telling you right in your face what could have happened. So is it possible that a lot of these Serapeum that were opened, and I'm reading that they could have been opened around the fall of Atlantis, and they could have held negative beings, except maybe this last one, which wasn't open, right? That stayed sealed. Maybe there was a reason that one stayed sealed. Maybe they didn't want these possibly, you know, dual consciousness to be released, which could have a positive effect. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this. And what I'm going to do next, I'll let you comment on this, but I want to read the last lines of the opera. These are the last lines that are spoken, and it's between this commander, and it's between the girl that he loves, Aida. So we have a PowerPoint where we have this on the screen. So Radames, that's the name of the Egyptian commander. He goes, "The fatal stone has closed upon me. Here is my tomb. The light of day never again shall I see. Never again shall I see Aida. Aida, where are you? May you at least live happily and never know my dreadful fate. What cry is that? A phantom? A vision? No, it is a human form. Heavens, Aida." And then Aida says, "It is I." Then Radames says, "You in this tomb?" And then Aida says, "My heart forewarned me of your condemnation into this tomb, which was being opened for you. I made my way by stealth. And here, far from every human eye, I wish to die in your arms." And then Radames says, "Die, so pure and lovely, to die for love of me, in the flower of your youth, to fly from life? Heaven created you for love, and I am killing you through loving you. No, you shall not die. I have loved you too much. You are too beautiful." And then Aida says, "In a delirium, do you see, death's radiant angel hastens toward us and carries us to eternal joy." I'm getting emotional as I read this. "Upon his golden wings, already I see heaven opening. There all torment ceases. There begins the ecstasy of an immortal love." So isn't this interesting? Like, when you compare this to the Serapeum, to a possible prison, two lovers being entombed, being let out by this French archaeologist, all of a sudden creates an opera about it. To me, it's like it's too synchronistic. And when I read the consciousness that was in that, I feel it was two consciousness, and they were positive and very possibly doing things to assist Earth. But tell me what you, from what I've expressed so far, I want to hear what your opinion is, Sean. Oh, you're muted.
I'm open to it. It's interesting. I'll look more into it. I'd like to stay in possibilities. And like the play resonates with like all the concepts of what it would be like being down there and what it would be like to be sealed away, being alive, and the emotions that would be coming forth, and what to do with those emotions once you have them, and the influence into bring that story out more that can be known and understood, and bring more generations to be influenced to look towards these places of power and bring people there. That would change the world. So big influence. Also, like the concept of, oh, what if people, like, how in some tombs people were buried with, like the royalty was buried with a lot of their treasures and worldly possessions, and even their slaves, some of them. So how many of the slaves were they in love with and like died with, and like depending on, I guess, if the slaves loved each other too, or whatever. I don't know what's going on. They'd be like lovers sealed in there. So like I could imagine that being it's some point a thing. So if that happened in the Serapeum, that'd be very interesting, and that probably all those thoughts of possibilities would be going through that person's mind, whether it's true or not. It influence the generations of the future.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, it's like when you start to get information from the Akashic records, and the Akashic records, blah blah blah. When you start to get information from that, and then it matches up to historical type things, and also operas and things that are like, how do you tie that to, like, to me, it's like all the synchronicities just start falling into place. Like, I love it. And when I finally get these Atlantis videos ready to be posted, I think the first one might be this Friday. If not, it'll definitely be next week at some point. I'm gonna like provide more details about this so that you can like follow the story a little bit more. And I never realized that Atlantis would steer me into this direction, but it does help understand what was going on in Atlantis at the time and why this possible prison may have needed to be constructed. And so it's all a beautiful symphony of realities is the best way to put it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Many other things. Did you want to take questions, or what do you think?
I think there's another slide or two.
Cool.
Oh, okay. The Sphinx. Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about the Sphinx, right? Because the mysterious riddle making Sphinx. Okay, so for a lot of people, including myself, I didn't find out about this till maybe 2 years ago. The Sphinx has a tail. And like when I found that out, I was like, well, that definitely makes it seem like that's a body of a cat, right? So, but before, like if I had always known there was a tail there, it would have been pretty obvious. So, and for a lot of other people too, it's like the Sphinx having a tail is like a big Mandela effect that helps us understand more what a Sphinx is. Right, and then we'll go on to the next slide.
Yeah, we got like footage of going all around that, so like we'll go into that. I wonder if it changed with it, but yeah, there was like a scaffolding around the badonk of that, and then it was interesting. And you go ahead into the next slide. I was just going to talk with that.
Yeah,
so that little thing in front.
This freaks me out, man. This one really messes with my mind, because we got special access to go between the paws of the Sphinx, and we had to we were there at 5:30 in the morning, something like that, and we were taking pictures and stuff in the front of it. I do not remember that temple complex. I personally I think I would have remembered it. It's like the paws and then the temple complex, right? So to me, it was a Mandela effect. What about you, Sean?
I remember parts of the temple complex, but I remember them being pushed out farther away because we took a picture in front of it, and
there was another. Yes,
it was like farther away, and Yeah, so it's either I feel like it may have been covered up by sand or something like halfway there or whatever, but whatever. It's a little freaky to me as well.
Yeah, and guess who discovered it in 1853? That same opera writing French archaeologist, Auguste Mariette. So to me, he kind of came onto the timeline making these discoveries and writing operas, and yeah, so
He discovered it and they covered it back up with sand and then uncovered it.
no,
Or a Mandela effect. Yeah. Okay.
well, no, like, oh yeah, this is the other this is another like temple type thing that was by the Sphinx, but it's a distance away from the Sphinx. It wasn't like down at the paws of the Sphinx, and that's still there. But no, like it was uncovered. This temple complex was uncovered, and it stayed uncovered. They didn't like it was like revealed since 1853. They didn't cover it back up. Like it's been there for more than 100 years, 200 years.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I freaked out. I gotta go back to the video footage and see what was going on and if it changed or whatever. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. So, is that the last slide? Let's check that out. Okay, no. Okay, so what I wanted to do too is in conclusion of this podcast is to talk about the Sphinx. Because the Sphinx, like what are the Sphinx? So everyone thinks about the Sphinx that's at the Great Pyramid of Giza. What was their purpose? Like why were they so important? Are they related to Atlantis? And the first bullet point that I have here on this slide is that there are statues that have spirits anchored into them that use observation technology. And this goes into a similar concept to another video I created about crystal eyes and about how certain statues have eyes made of crystal that are used as an observation type technology. But Sean, is there anything you'd want to add to that concept of like the Sphinx and why they would want to observe?
Sure. I mean, so this is what I tune into with it. Besides the statues, it's like based on like chimera type species concepts, but like when people go into the mythos of like, oh, why do we have all these mythological creatures in Greek mythology and other stuff? So I've had Sphinx appear to me in visions before, in vision quests, and they're usually guarding something in like a mystery school off going into like proving yourself to pass through. There's like concepts in actual physical mystery schools that have also demonstrated this, like passing through the Eye of Needle, answering a riddle, or proving your worth, or getting the Sphinx to like you is mostly my preferred method. They're vicious. But they're very intelligent. They have like a large amount of awareness and like libraries of information, as what we know with the myths of there being a library under the Sphinx's paw and other aspects. But that even going into energetics, most of the Sphinxes I tune into are very high dimensional, interact with Lyra and like the foundations of the mammalian species of different types, and humanity and feline races and the different formations in history for that. And they mostly exist in higher dimensions, and then they will interact with people here. Some people I've read have been Sphinxes before, as well as their DNA interacts with us in different ways. Mostly I find it energetically granted when a person goes through the mystery school. Then so they have access to large amounts of libraries of information and knowledge.
Can I just pause you for a second? If someone were to have like Sphinx DNA technology, what would your advice be for them if they wanted to activate that?
Sure. if you know you have it, or you want to discover you have it, start interacting with the concept of the sphinxes, and like call out to them and ask if they'll like come to you, and if like you're worthy or not. And you go through a vision quest experience to see if you have access. Even if you don't have their DNA, there's ways to interact with mystery schools that they'll be part of, in especially like places on the planet you can visit, and then they'll appear to you. Like if you were to go to the Sphinx's paw and then interact with it, and then ask permission to go in, and then attempt to prove yourself and do the to-do list that it gives you to prove yourself, and you can go through its mystery school and earn the technology. Same thing with your DNA. If you want to go into that, then you go into vision tech. You go into meditation of vision journeying, and go through the nexus point of the doorways and the hallway of doors to find out the place that is oriented towards them. Then it will start to shift as you've trained and you got into that position of creating the imagination tech, and the color and the light starts coming in, and then you allow to then flow in. After a certain point, it will, if you've done it right, it will just show up, and you don't even have to influence it or create yourself, and they'll be speaking to you and seeing if you're worthy to go through them. And then if you, my strategy is become friends with them, ask them what they want and how you can prove yourself. If you've had past lives interacting with them, that will go into it. If you do stuff for the benefit of their species, that also, you can, what they like.
Yeah, what is Sphinx like?
It's kind of like getting somebody that knows a lot of things a birthday present. So it's not easy, but you could probably do something that they kind of like, but it's hard to very much impress them. But it would go along with who you are and remembering more of it, or something you have in talent that like is a genius that you're really good at, that then you can do for them that they may not be proficient.
Right.
And do their to-do list, get them to like you. You may not have to answer a riddle, but if you're good at riddles, hey, there's that, because they do like people that are intelligent, and then that can challenge them in a conversation. And they're into knowledge accumulation. And they're also good at destruction, so there's that. So be careful. There's not some of them are not that happy with humanity, but some are more of like a caretaker, like raising up a child type of thing role. So it depends on who you find or you're connected to in DNA.
Like a nanny.
Yeah.
Some of them are like a nanny. Okay. All right. Yeah, and I guess if you can pass, if they ask you a riddle or ask you like a difficult question to solve, and you can solve it, you can, I'm sure, like upgrade to another level. Or is it, what kind of commerce do they normally trade for?
Oh, they got a lot of knowledge, so they're adding to the library constantly. So if you have aspects in your library, in your heart, that they don't have access to, they'll love that. Or because like it's hard, because most people don't even know who they are, so it'd be hard to just like give that to them. But if you can attempt to see what they don't have, but it also go into action, like what are you willing to do for humanity or the world, or that helps their species. And if you have their DNA lineage, you can heal yourself. That will then create a healing, that locomotion affects everything in your DNA lineage, and then can affect them in unity, though they might already be ahead of the curve with that. And with the statues, like with a lot of higher dimensional, multidimensional beings, they will look, even if they weren't a part of the foundation of the statue, they're looking for more representations of their concept for people to have as a like calling card to interact with them. So even if it's not an inception, then they'll overlay with it. But if it's a very powerful sculptor, then they will know the magic technology to link an actual spirit to it. And then most of those ones in Egypt have like an actual spirit, Sphinx guardian. Like with what you said before, the Serapeum was guarded by how many?
600. 600.
Why would you do that?
I know. Why would you need 600 Sphinx? Exactly.
Are they guarding something from getting in, or something from getting out? Maybe both.
Maybe both. And that reminds me too. There were two of those big Serapeum 100-ton granite boxes that were left in the hallway. So I don't know whether they were getting ready to be put into place or being taken out. And there was like hardly any, so when you go to the Serapeum and you're going down into the Grand Gallery, it's so big, it's like blocking the whole thing. You gotta to get to the rest of it, you gotta go around like the side of it. Yeah. So people have no idea how it was even moved in there. Like there's no room for movement. So yeah.
It breaks down in physics, like, oh, well, we know they were moving it through here, but so it's like, of course they would it would not, sometimes it would be failures, but like, what are they failing on, and how do they even get it in there to begin with to the level that they got it in?
Yeah, so there's
just nudge it more, just push.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't think so.
It's like rolling pins. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so getting back to what you were talking about before about the Sphinx, that they're guardians, and so their placement, so like the Great Sphinx at Giza, I would imagine is guarding the Great Pyramids, right? So where they are placed is significant for what they're trying to guard and protect.
Oh, and they didn't find guarding rolling pins under it, right?
No, nothing like that. No.
So, we collapsed it, but we're gonna take out all the pins that it collapsed on top of. Okay.
Yeah, no. And some of the chambers where the Serapeum were located were sealed, and they realized there was something behind it, so they had to break it down. So not only were these 100-ton big rectangular black granite boxes in there, they were also sealed closed. And then there's one part too at the end of the Grand Gallery of the Serapeum where there is there's probably like a 2x2 tunnel that goes into like another section. And what the Egyptians have done is they put rocks and stuff inside there. And some people were questioning that. So we'll put a link to Uncharted X's. He's got like a 4-part series. I think it's on the 4th part where he talks about there seems to be like another section that the Egyptians don't even want to explore. Like they don't want to send a robot down there or anything like that. And maybe it's better that they don't. So there's just so much funny for that.
No, they should live stream it all, and then so they can't just cover it up and like whatever, whoever discovered the Serapeum before, and they're like, let's take all this stuff. Oh, these were empty. We didn't find anything, or whatever. It could have been if they found like some alien skeleton or something. It's like nothing to see.
All right. Exactly.
Joking.
All right. So if we just go back to that thing, the slide on the Sphinx, I just want to make sure that we've covered everything. They can observe multiple realities at once. They're next to the thing that they're guarding. They have a high level of destruction technology, so watch out. They interact with Lyra and have been here since the Earth became a planet. And they're known for their riddles and tests of great knowledge to see if a human or species can ascend to the next level.
Yeah, and the energetic multidimensional species, not the statues. Who knows how old these statues are? Like the scientists are breaking down their narrative.
Exactly.
Like one of the comments is saying, "Oh, is the Sphinx older than the pyramid?" Who knows? Like shit. They're who do you trust in the carbon dating concept? And then like there's people that are talking about like with the precession of the equinox and that like link with like why is the Aquarian age, okay, maybe in the Leo age there might have been a concept with why that's there. I've heard that before, but who knows, it might have been even older.
Right. Yeah, so now if anybody has any questions, we could try to tackle them if you want to add the comment area. There may have already been some questions that.
Okay, sure. Yeah, where do you want to? I'll start at the top, and if you want to go at the bottom, and ask your questions if you have them now, or hold your truth.
Okay. And by the way, like, I'm not sure if we could answer all the questions, but we could definitely give it a try. So Corey Stokes had a question about if there's any relation to the Sphinx and an owl. Avatar: The Last Airbender has a buried. Oh, this is right up your alley, Sean. Has a buried library in the desert guarded by an owl spirit. They disrespect the knowledge for war, and he buries the library. Destruction. Okay. Owls.
I mean, they're saying there's a library under the Sphinx. I'm not able to like confirm and deny that. There's a big tunnel system under the Sphinx and the pyramids, and there's like I read a bunch of cities and stuff, and so, like depending on how far deep you go, some of them still have appears to be life in them. Is it human? Then libraries. Oh yeah, there's a bunch. Secret libraries. Some of them are not exactly books or paper. So then the different concepts are like, oh, copper scrolls or like long-lasting technology over time, and then even crystal libraries of like big crystal caverns and things that have like ancient Atlantis tech that can interact with the mind and consciousness and the DNA. There is a bunch of those. They may not all look as you'd want them to, but there's definite evidence to support these big tunnels that are being covered up by the governments and blocked off from people going down deep into them. And the people that have gone into them, they seem to keep going and going, and they have to turn back because they don't have the fuel or the water or enough resources to go through it and explore it. So that can lead in mazes to some not the friendliest of places, as well as traps and some like treasure places, and then some even like knowledge held. And then the 1% of ancient Atlantis technology. So yes.
Okay.
But like find out for the Sphinx itself.
Okay, we'll do next question. This is from Andreas Sun. What is the symbology behind the snakes in the Hindu and Egyptian culture? They wear the snake symbols on the crowns, I guess like the cobra, on the head. Some information about Anubis dog archetype in your awareness.
What would you say? And I'll go into
it. Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, when you think about the famous King Tut headdress, where for a lot of Mandela effect, for a lot of people, it was just always the cobra. Now it's the cobra and the vulture representing the upper and lower kingdoms of Egypt, where before it was just the cobra symbol. But I don't know much about that, Sean. I want to hear what you've uncovered about the snakes on the crowns and Anubis, etc.
All right. There's a lot of symbology. So like Freemasonry goes into every secret has like 7 aspects, say even more. With what I've tuned into, snakes are one of the ancient races, types of things. There's a Naga culture underground of snake humanoid type things that is also talked about in Hindu culture. They're fairly they give off a lot of drama, to where I'd like in tracking back, I've in healing clients and stuff, a lot of the drama and headaches and pain and stuff, as soon as we resolve where it's coming from, it goes away. So that goes into my, sometimes, not saying they're all bad or anything, some are good. We even went to a place in Egypt that had a bunch of Naga hieroglyphs all around it, and like this big multi-headed serpent god thing that I didn't even know was in the pantheon. And when I was like reading into the place, it was like being viewed upon by a bunch of Naga from an underground civilization beneath the structure. So, do you remember that place we went to?
Was that the Valley of the Kings?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
And besides that, it's also in the adders in there's like some druid concepts with Ireland and stuff, but like not all with that, because St. Patrick's history, he's more of a general, and he killed a bunch of people in the revised history, and they drove out the snakes out of Ireland, which they never had snakes. It was the druids. But so there's positive and negative ones of these groups as well. And then snake symbology goes in a lot. Besides, we're like a super hybrid that has like a lot of different genetic lineages combining together in one, including the serpent race, and then being like one of the founding older races. That symbology goes into inheritance and symbology and mystery schools, and being very much a part of it, with the caduceus and medical establishment being a symbology for the divine current and DNA and kundalini current going up the spine, though that's not the only one, that force that we have that can go up the spine. Including like things like the vulture and the higher consciousness. So it's like heaven and the earth meeting together. The serpent, one of the serpent gods, one of the earth gods is represented by having a serpent head. There's a lot. Vultures being well seen as, they're not like as they're, Egyptians were big into overcoming death and the secret beyond death. So vultures had a big thing into that, and they were super resilient, as they could eat almost anything. And they looked after death, and they could figure it out. So they were like omens having to do with it. They have greater knowledge. Spirit, it's anchored into them in observance. And like one of the only birds that can survive in the desert. But and then Anubis. I mean, there's a lot going on with the dog archetype. I'm personally friends with Anubis. He's got a lot of drama because his shadow, like a lot of the Egyptian gods, have drama because they're being very attacked. Some of them got really screwed up, and some fake deities took their place and are pretending to be them. And the dark deities, oh my God, like they're still attacking people even to this day. And so like people that have entanglement with them in past lives in Egypt, that will be affecting them now, especially like Set and Apophis and stuff. My God, going more into this, the serpent of chaos. So like, yeah. Large amount of drama with that on the planet. Anubis, I like more. It's he's not that as dark, but he does have a bit of a shadow. But he's fairly nice and will help people in the crossing over point. And he's got a lot of tech having to do with understanding death and life and immortality and beyond. And the desert Egyptian jackal race has like a big link to him, and the DNA lineage, if any of that will interbreed with the other dog races, sometimes we'll find that. And he'll be a part of a lot of crossing over scenarios with a lot of the dog race too.
Okay. So. No, that's a lot of information. That's another show right there, Sean. just getting into that stuff. I noticed too there were some questions about like lions and cats, and why are cats given so much importance, especially in Egypt. My question is, how come cats are still, like, on the internet, cats are given importance, like with cat videos, right? So people definitely have a connection with the feline races, which could be rooted in Lyra, which could have roots to Atlantis, which could have roots to the original human type DNA. So I think for a lot of people, like they're not everyone's drawn to cats, but there are enough people that are drawn to cats because cats are very special.
Oh god, yeah.
we probably should. I mean, say what you would like about cats.
That's a huge topic.
I know it's big. It's a big topic. I know.
Yeah, maybe we should have a cat show.
Yeah.
Show all our cat. Everyone brings in all their cat pictures.
Yeah.
They have a big effect on people, right? So the DNA, one of the root ancient races, they're like, known with the Lyrans, which is like one of, whatever people want to go into. Like my personal belief is humanity is bigger than just this planet, and the humanoid DNA concept. The residual image of human is even older than this universe, but when it's brought into this universe, its first anchorage into this galaxy in concept, I look back, is interacting with Lyran races. And then like that going into other residual images that are older than this universe, such as the feline, which is really old and has like a huge effect on everyone and hacking into the reality in a positive way, and continues in the future and has like one of the more strategically strong chess moves in her reality, looking forward. And like with the algorithm of the internet and it being constantly in people's perception and reality and entanglement. So
yeah, and even like things like the light language of their purring, like there's so many things that people are really drawn to.
Yeah, healing purr that it heals bones and tissue, and it's like you just want to hug it. It just heals you, like one of the greater therapies.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's do one last question from. I know George asked a question. Let me go see if I can find it.
I'll go through some.
Yeah, maybe we'll make this our last question because we're hitting on the 90-minute mark. But George Lowe says, what do you guys think of the theory that the pyramid and the sarcophagus is an elaborate astral travel initiation chamber? Woo!
Yeah, who is this George Lowe guy? He seems
Who is this George
like
Lowe
he
guy?
knows some stuff.
We might have been with him in Egypt. Yeah, he might know some stuff.
What do you think about it? That's a good question.
I remember being in the Great Pyramid with George and you, Sean, and a group of other people. And I remember being in, was it the Queen's Chamber?
I think
we were
in the King's Chamber or the Queen's Chamber?
I think we were in both. I think we went to both.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would make sense. It is definitely some kind of initiation. I haven't really thought too much about it, but tell me what you think, Sean. For astral travel.
So he's talking about the Great One, right? So, I mean, I was amazed when I went in there. Like, if you want to talk about your experience too, we went in there. Everyone was like, dude, it was great acoustics. My God, it was beautiful. Just like listening to people like do toning. It felt like it activated as a technology and more. And I laid down and like meditated, and I fell asleep and had like I felt like I met some people and had some conversations. And
that's
like
right. We did.
Rapid speed.
Yeah, you did fall asleep or something.
Like compressed time too for a while, and I went a bunch. It feels like I spiritually went a bunch of places, so I'd agree with that. And especially if you had more time to sleep in there, woo. And it felt like you could send healing and remedy forward and backward in time in it and affect the entire planet at a greater rate. You wanted to save like what information we found out about the pyramids, right, for another show, right?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, definitely, because time is limited for sure.
Yeah. It's huge. Like the technology of it. Oof, it's alive.
Yeah, para, fire, then mid within, fire within. Yeah, that's definitely another show for sure. So with that, I think we're going to wrap it up because we're right about at the 90-minute mark. And I want to thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
And thank everyone for that's watched the show. We hope we've done a little bit to like make you say like, wow, I didn't realize this or that. And I love talking about these things and Mandela effects and Akashic records and soft disclosure and what reality actually is within our holographic universe. Perhaps I'm a hologram. Sean, perhaps you're a holographic technology.
Yeah, light splitting infinitely to make an experience perceivable by your conception. No, what else would you call that?
Exactly.
Everything is light that you perceive. Otherwise, it'd just be dark, and you're like, where am I?
Hard light technology. Exactly. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching this episode of the Symphony of Realities podcast. Look out for my Atlantis video, which I should be posting soon. And Sean, anything you want to say? Any shout outs in conclusion?
Yes, explore the world. Get out there. Don't be afraid. There are things to be afraid of, but they will usually have warnings in front of them, so you have a chance to back out. But yeah, there's much to discover in the world. They just buried crap up. I mean, they just buried these amazing structures up in Egypt. When we were going across the desert, there are all these mountains that look like pyramid structures with like straight line angles on them, and they just look like they're just covered in sand.
Exactly.
Like
suspicious.
The government doesn't want to do any of this stuff.
I know. Exactly. Well, I think everything's going to be revealed at some point.
It's kind of like at this point, Mandela effect is like new bubbles of reality entering into our field and then becoming aware of them and comparing and contrast. But finding out that there are 11,000 pyramids in South America, my God.
Did that make the news? Like, where did you get the number 11,000?
You remember when we were down in Mexico and the tour guide said there are 11,000?
Oh, okay.
And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, that's a lot of pyramids. Exactly.
Yeah, they just cover like who's making all these? And they had to like they gave the story that they made them to pray to the gods so they would get rain. And as soon as like the rain didn't come, they would turn on the leader, because it was hard apparently to be the leader, and then move off somewhere else to where they could get rain, and then make another pyramid. I don't know if that's exactly just like, oh yeah, just make another pyramid. It's
no, I don't think so. I don't.
But you know, I'm sure that's part of it.
Okay.
11,000.
That's a lot of pyramids. All right. Well, with that, thank you, everyone. Until our next podcast.
Thank you. And share it everywhere if you want more of this.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.